What's up, y'all? Welcome to another episode of Creative Community Conversations, sponsored by ATBA Impact Group, where we plant positive seeds of change on a consistent basis. I am Carrie Irene. I am the CEO and founder of ATBA Impact Group. And if you don't know, ATBA stands for Able to Be Able, because we all are. So I hope you're looking good, feeling good, smelling good, all the goods. And here is a sneak peek so you know why you need to stick around. Check it out.
Because all those children who can sit quietly outside on a log and read a book as much as they can sit quietly at a table. Whereas the children who can't sit quietly at a table can most likely find a space outside or in a different environment where they can. So it doesn't affect the masses if we cater for the few.
So you already know. Grab your favorite beverage, get a snack, get something to write with and something to write on, because we about to get it in.
Trotting. Duck. Good boy. No, I was brought up in a housing estate. Quite a modern 1960s built housing estate. Uncle put the passion for horses in us, and for all we didn't go much as kids, it left that bug, and that bug grew and grew and grew until we now own 3 horses. At the house, we've got 2 dogs, a German Shepherd and a Lurcher. But on the farm that we run, which is where we do all the education work for children with kind of behavioural needs, we have 3 horses, 14 sheep, about 50 ducks and ducklings, 30 odd chickens, the 2 dogs go down the farm, 14 guinea pigs, a couple of pet rats, maybe 7 or 8 turkeys, and normally a piglet as well.
So what is it that you currently do? And then take us back to the road that got you there.
Okay, so currently I'm the head of school and education director for what's called an alternative provision here in the UK. So they come to us, they stay for a period, maybe a month to a year, on the idea we will try and integrate them back into that school or a more appropriate school. Most of the children we deal with, however, don't come from a background of a medical diagnosis. They come from behavioural needs that have been spurred on by ACEs type challenges, so adverse childhood experiences. They've come from care systems, foster systems. They've come from abuse in the home. They've come from breakdowns in the home. They've come from maybe siblings transitioning, parents transitioning, parents changing their sexuality, relationship statuses. You know, there can be all sorts of things that affect these children at such a young age when their brains are and their neural pathways are just starting to develop. And we basically help them to gain more emotional independence, be able to understand their emotions and find ways to deal with them. Because, you know, people have had trauma rather than are kind of born with autism, but might show there's an 80% crossover in the traits that can be shown between autism and trauma. We could do this, you know. So these children's neural pathways were being developed and got disrupted. So we can help to kind of reprogram those kind of neurodiverse things going on in the brain to help them cope with their future and see their own future and their own path. And how they will cope with these situations that might still be arising in most of my children's lives. If you know what I mean, they're not post-traumatic stress. They're, you know, complex traumatic. These are ongoing things, and these children might still be going through court cases, might still be going through school transitions, parent transitions. So we take them. We give them freedom to build relationships and trust with adults and members of staff before we put a lot of demand on the children. We use the animals a lot because the animals don't judge them. They don't care whether they came today in a good mood or a bad mood. They don't care what happened at home over the weekend. They have no judgment on the children, so then the children know that They know that that guinea pig or that duck doesn't care if someone bullied them in school yesterday or someone at home bullied them. It's going to give them that fresh start every morning, and it will just treat them how they treat it. So if they treat it with kindness and empathy, that animal will give that back, especially with the horses that we work with as well. You know, trust building is a massive thing with them. And then the children are allowed to start developing positive routines, so helping clean the animals each morning or feed, or helping go around. It's a 15-acre site, so there's also woodland and fields and follies. Go around and help the staff tidy an area or plant the vegetables for that day. It allows them to develop a routine that means at 9 a.m. we are going to start this routine. This is a demand. It has to be done. These are, especially with the animals, they can't live without their food and waters. So it's an easy demand to make. The children understand that demand. And then it preps them for the idea that eventually at 9 a.m. they will have to get up and dress themselves and get to school each morning. They will have to cope that when they go to school, there will be set routines that happen every single morning. Then slowly we will move them towards an indoor classroom we have on site, the rec room, that normally starts with board game playing, especially a lot of cooperative board game playing where we will play together against the game. So the staff and the children are allies on the same side. Takes away a lot of the authoritarian approach that a lot of these children have banged heads with in mainstream education and have got their backs up already. We need to break those boundaries down. So board game playing, reading, poetry, art, learning about nature, but in a very practical sense, building things, mechano. These things still all challenge their educational skills. You teach your child to learn, to play, and they'll learn. You teach your child to learn, they can learn anything. It's about learning again, and the ability to learn and the ability to work with others to achieve your goals. Then that will progress eventually onto maths, English, and science. We still try to do it in a kind of fun and a lot of space outdoors and indoors so that we're not feeling trapped. And then eventually we will hope that they'll be introduced to a peer or a group of peers and work with them for a while, ready to integrate back into that more mainstream setting. And our staff might then go to the setting to give them a bit of an ally, or the school staff might come to us for a few weeks to form a relationship. That child has an ally in the school. Nothing's worse than being the new kid and not knowing anyone, especially a school you've been to before possibly, and you're now going back and people know you left and left for a reason and they remember your behavior. You can imagine the anticipation that builds in a child about going back into that situation. So it's about helping them to break down those barriers tiny bit at a time. And then the rest of the time on the farm, we run events during the weekends. So the place is busy 7 days a week.
It's like, shoot, I just want to pack my bag and come work on the farm. That is such an amazing thing that you're doing. And it's quite the mission. And it's so needed everywhere, though. Every system should have this option.
My partner, we both go into schools as well and advise and consult and at various talking kind of engagements. And a lot of them, we try to get them set up a learning outdoor area. So just some logs, we normally help supply them, set up some bug houses and take literacy, say, outside the classroom 1 day a week. Because all those children who can sit quietly outside on a log and read a book as much as they can sit quietly at a table. Whereas the children who can't sit quietly at a table can most likely find a space outside or in a different environment where they can. So it doesn't affect the masses if we cater for the few. It's a bit like building a school without a disabled ramp and then no one who's in a wheelchair can use, or with mobility problems can use it. Build it with a disabled ramp and everybody can use it. The other people can walk up the ramp. So it's that ethos that we try to push to schools, that if you are trauma informed, if you're providing trauma informed practice in your school to all your staff, there should be ways around a lot of these difficulties that don't just result in suspension after suspension after suspension, expulsions, naughty kid syndrome, peer groups, bullying, etc. we just need to look at possibly some alternative ways of still teaching in the mainstream and still teaching the mainstream curriculums, but just in a little bit more out of the box thinking way on how we can deliver that to the children to get the best response. Because if those children are learning, everyone in the class will find learning easier. And we both came from mainstream teaching, so we have experienced it firsthand, in that mainstream high school and primary settings. So, my thoughts go out to all the teachers out there who work in mainstream, because it's a really hard job to get yourself up. And, I have 4 children and only one that's little now. It's hard managing one. It's definitely hard managing 2, 3, or 4. Managing 30 in a confined room.
It's really all about this right here. We do things according to the way that we see the world, which is shaped by our experiences. When you're able to see the reasons of your why of the decisions that you make, it can actually propel you forward. This thing right here is such a powerful weapon that we can use in our everyday lives to move us forward and out of situations and circumstances that we find ourselves in. Sometimes we are born into things and we believe that they are normal, but if something in your life does not feel right, it is probably not right for you. You have an opportunity to change your life according to the decisions that you make, but you have to realize that there is a decision that is to be made.
I have 4 children and only one that's little now. It's hard managing one. It's definitely hard managing 2, 3, or 4. Managing 30 in a confined room for 4 or 5 hours and being the sole responsible person. Our children spend more of their waking day during the week with those teachers than they spend with their parents or anybody else. So those teachers have that responsibility. It's not down to them being bad teachers or not understanding. It's down to the systems, the academies, the heads putting these things in guidance in place for their staff, if you know what I mean, and giving them the funding and the opportunity. It takes no cost to put 10 logs in the playground and a couple of pallets and build a bug hut. We're not
no cost
that need the budget. Even when children come out to ours as whole, we have whole mainstream schools that come for weekend or weekday events to do history and Romans and Anglo-Saxons and any part of history, Egyptians. And yet there's a cost to the farm, but that cost is so minimal when those children can learn a curriculum in almost a day that takes 6 to 8 weeks in a mainstream school. Struggle to get them to take it in and be able to regurgitate stuff about it. We can do in a day, and those children are physically getting other experiences while they're there. They're getting to see sheep for the first time. They're getting to run around out in playing fields for the first time without people going, no, don't run. People don't, our children come on site, especially I love when there's 90 of them and they all get off the coaches and I'm like, okay, so the first place we're going is a big field, right, go. And off we go. We run. And I've got 12 members of staff who've just got off the coaches, right? She was still going, what do you...
Have you gotten your ATBA flyer yet? Or what you waiting for? Click the link above and support ATBA Impact Group as we plant positive seeds of change on a consistent basis, so you can keep looking good, feeling good, and smelling good. All the goods. It's good stuff.
I put the good stuff in. I put the good stuff in.
Our children come on site, especially I love when there's 90 of them and they all get off the coaches and I'm like, okay, so the first place we're going is a big field, right, go. And off we go. We run. And I've got 12 members of staff who've just got off the coaches, right? She was still going, what do you mean you're letting 90 of them run? But actually, by giving those children the trust that they're there to have fun with us, means they get to the field. They don't know where they're going anyway. So they kind of start running and they look to me for where I'm running to. And then they follow me. And then by the time we've got there, they're all stood in the field in a circle waiting for what I've got to say. it's just a different approach. It's not necessarily, there's not boundaries. It's not a soft touch. We have some very strict boundaries, but our only behavioral policy is that children are expected to behave appropriately, because that can be so varied. You know, we have some children with some really special needs who appropriate behavior to them is not the same as appropriate behavior to another 9-year-old. You know, so there's no point having a lengthy, you must do this, you must do that set of rules. But there are rules and boundaries. They're just put in place in a way the children can take them on, understand them, and deal with them emotionally, rather than feeling cornered or bullied or lonely or left out or, you know, isolated, shamed, guilt. We all know what those feelings feel like as an adult. You can think back to when you were 7, how they must have felt.
Yeah, that's important, because you're right. We don't like them now. So why would we perpetrate them? Why would we amplify them? What would you say is the main thing you would need support with right now?
I think the problem we have is that we are just overcapacitated. So we have been desperately in the UK looking for a second site near where we are just to accommodate more children, because so many of our children have to come on a 1 to 2 basis, so 2 staff, 1 child. The idea of having the 15 acres and them knowing there's no other children there normally is the case for the first 6 to 12 weeks, because they need that space to reset and not to be bombarded with pressure and demand from peers, as well as adults, as well as new people they're meeting, as well as this new environment. But that means we take on 2 to 3 children per day, not 30, 40. So, and we're a private school. We don't receive any charity or government funding. So the only funding is direct through either the school's inclusion officers or parents who send the children to us. But obviously we teach 1 child in the morning. We have 2 to 3 members of staff. Yeah, it's costly pursuit. However, it is so worth it to see those children then reintegrate. Every penny is worth seeing those children make those relationships, build those trust back up, especially children that have got high kind of 4 or more ACEs scores, who really have been traumatized during their kind of early childhood. Seeing them be able to find themselves again and find that trust in humanity again. However, it does limit us to how many children a week we can physically put on there, if you know what I mean. So our next goals and steps will be to fund a second site. As I just, 2 calls this morning I fielded where I had to turn down students schools were desperate for the place, and they were like, oh, well, even if you could just get an hour. And, I squeeze them in wherever I can, but, there's a limit to safeguarding, etc., and risk assessment when we can have children. Therefore, our stage just now is to up capacity, and for myself and Mick, professionally, to go out and do more conference speaking and more speaking in schools, etc. And we do trauma-informed practice courses across the UK, is to keep doing more of those so that we can promote this kind of module, this ethos, to a wider audience, so it affects more children. If we can only affect 10 to 20 children at the site, but if we're in each school helping their staff, we can be affecting hundreds. Birmingham and Coventry and Leicestershire are just massively oversubscribed, the provisions in terms of what people can offer, and there is only 1 or 2 provisions that actually offer trauma-informed practice. You'd think it'd be widespread, but actually most of these provisions are set up as farms or as music groups, or aimed originally at funding from the autistic communities, the blind communities, young offenders. So kind of groups coming in with a leader, meeting a team member, doing planting for the day. The children I have just been through extreme court cases and abuse. That they won't even get them out of the car if they realize there's 8 other children there, and it's a kind of very set plan day. So there isn't many provisions available for these children who need that kind of very specialist one-to-one reset and restart. And myself and Mick are the UK's leading providers of trauma-informed practice in the UK. 1 more site in the Midlands that was larger than the one we're on now. Woodlands in the kind of 50-acre region. We're on 15 at the minute. So that almost a training centre can run on 1/3 one student could be running another, and a group could be running in a different section. Never the twain shall meet. The problem with multiple small sites is to fill them with animals and all those different experiences and spread the senior staff's expertise out could dilute what we're doing rather than help grow it. Whereas one site where it could become a more central hub from this founding site would make more sense for what we're doing, but also just for the community at large. It allows a bigger site for community events. You know, at the weekends, we work with various small community groups, work with large community festivals, weddings, scouts, cubs, Girl Guides. Therefore, you know, it's great they can have 15 acres, but a lot of times we get asked for numbers that are just, you know, too many for that size of site. A larger site that could be opened up on weekends. So when scouts want to do a jamboree, they can have the entire 50 acres of woodland for the weekend and they can bring on their 500, whereas at the minute we're limited to 120. 50 acres is something that within, you know, a few weeks can be made stable and safe enough for risk assessing for children to start attending. On the site we're now is a completely eco-green site. So we have when we moved in, we had no mains, water, electricity. Going kind of back a little bit, we were teachers. We had eventually got ourselves a horse, which turned into 2 horses, 6 sheep and 6 chickens, and a couple of dogs, which meant the little paddock rented wasn't quite big enough for us, never mind the fact that we saw people kept asking for events, people kept asking our children to come. So that was when we pushed out of mainstream teaching, found a different site and started to grow it, you know, completely from a derelict piece of land to what it is now. And people can see kind of pictures of it on our Facebook and our webpage. But what that did is kind of spurred us on to the ambition that this was something that was needed out there. I've always worked with community groups and community funding as a theatre director before I became a teacher. I could see there was all these communities out there who needed a facility. So we moved and grew this facility, and it's now grown to the 100 animals, the multiple staff, the ongoing projects, a year. And that's just something we'd like to continue to grow.
Oh, it's going to grow. It's going to grow. You know, it's nothing like an idea whose time has come.
Oh, here she comes. Here she comes. Oh, it's an exciting moment. I'm like a proud new mum every time. Here it is, coming out the shower. You're chirping. Oh. As I said before, it looked like a little pinky when it came out, but you can see the feathers on it. They're due to fluff up. Here's chick number 5, successfully born. Just gotta get that bit of shell off her head. She'll work it out. That's just where they're stuck to all the last little bits of umbilical cords from the veins and a lot of people, even directors of education from the councils, come out and they say to me, but so haven't you got any charity funding for this? Like, and I said, well, it's fine, but you know, we are a small family run company. If I take a member of staff out, which will cost me about £20,000 a year to get them to sit and do funding paperwork in the UK, because I don't know what it's like in the US, but in the UK, you know, it takes you miles and you know, hours and hours of prep and constant rejigging to get funding in, never mind to then go through the process with the funding board and then to make sure that those funds are allocated very specifically when the money comes. That's a full-time funding manager's job. And for all I have done bits of it in the past as part of my trade, I know how much time it takes. I can't put one of my specialist teachers or staff out to do that. But without funding, there's no 20,000 to pay the wages for the person who's going to sit there for the year ahead of getting the money and hope they get paid at the end, which is why we started to look more and more at kind of private philanthropists in education who can come in and see the vision and be part of that vision and kind of understand the process so that then they can make sure, yes, obviously funds have to be allocated and correctly spent, but they are aware it's not just on a piece of paper. You know what I mean? It's not just a funding application for a new building where no one really understands the effect it has on the community and these children. We know now from studies that if we anticipate things, like if we anticipate things are good, like we know we're going to the cinema to see our favorite film, our dopamine already gets high before we get out, getting dressed up for a night out, putting your music on. You're building that dopamine level before the events happened. But what we've now learned with medical studies, and there's a few government reports in the UK now coming out that dopamine can also be the opposite. So if the day before I'm anticipating that you're going to send me to yet another new school thing, and I don't really know anything about it, and it's just another thing, and it's because if not, mom and dad will get fined or put in jail. So all these thoughts, you know, even if we're talking about stable parenting, but these thoughts are still going through his child's mind. Before they've even gone to sleep, their dopamine levels have started to plummet. So when they wake up, they're already down here. And then we're going to put them in a new environment that's scary and overwhelming. And we expect them just to be like, oh, here's your new teacher. They're an authoritarian figure. You have to do what they say. How are they going to get from here to here to be able to cope with that? So what we do is it's about getting them there and taking those little steps, little step at a time. So each time they're coming, their dopamine the day before, like, oh, tomorrow I'll get to meet my favorite animal again. That little thought helps re-trigger that dopamine level, you know, helps get them prepared for what they want to do without it being that anticipation of schooling.
Tell us a little bit more about the event you got coming up, the Time to Heal Summit.
Yeah, so in June on the 22nd and the 23rd, something me and myself, my partner Mick, are very passionate about is ACEs awareness. We both have ACEs scores. My partner, Mick Collins, many of you might know him from various places on the internet, from Insta, Facebook. He is a perfect 10. He runs the Perfect 10 Club. So this healing summit will be a live healing summit on the farm. It will be based around ACEs awareness and trauma-informed practice. In that sense, we will have live speakers who will be taking the stage to talk about ACEs awareness, to talk about different things that help us, both as children and adults, with our ACEs. So hypnotherapy, Dr. Stacey Carr will be coming. We'll be looking at some Reiki. We're looking at having workshops, which will be out in the fields and in the woodland, doing different yoga, Reiki practices, sound bathing in the forest. And then there'll be some live music performances from Ray Reid, who's an advocate for CPTSD and PTSD in this country, in the UK. She'll be playing some sets for us, along with a musician who was originally a mainstream student of ours, but who's worked closely with the site all the way through and supporting it, Dan Gascoigne. He'll be playing some sets. And then we'll be doing some animal therapy in one area, some arts and crafts therapy in another area, and some Q&As. And then we'll be ending both days with a summer solstice bonfire, because it just happens to coordinate with the time of year that we love, which is, you know, bringing rejuvenation back to the earth, opening the door for, you know, midsummer and for autumn to come in, chance to appreciate the seasons. So we'll be having a bonfire at the end of the night, kind of late afternoon into the evening. We should be open, I imagine, we'll be releasing all the details, but from about 10 in the morning till about 8 at night. Chance to chat, catch up, chill out, talk academics, talk theory, talk positivity, talk whatever we want in the evening, in a very kind of chilled and social way. For the public, there'll also be food and drink stalls going on as well, and a little shopping market for all sorts of different mindfulness products, home crafted stuff, local goods, etc. So we're going to bring the community in from lots of different sides. So yeah, really excited about it. We run lots of events, but this one, you know, maybe around 30 to 50 events a year, but this one has got me buzzing because the people who are coming on board are so into the idea of making positive change in their communities and positive change to others, and opening their voices and opening their hearts to let others see that there is way. So people coming could be people who are just interested, never seen anything about it before. It could be people who are already into Reiki, yoga, mindfulness, meditation, want to come along, experience different types, different tutors, teachers, social workers, lawyers, people who want to get more informed about trauma-informed practice. You know, we've been talking about children. Trauma-informed practice affects all HR departments when it comes to staffing. You know, there is multiple staff in every school who will also have ACEs, not just the children. You know, so what happens when that child's ACEs triggers that member of staff's ACEs? What happens when you've got someone on the phone at a call center and they're triggered by something someone says to them down the phone? So it is open to, anyone who wants to become informed about kind of ACEs and trauma awareness and self-healing and healing journeys for those who maybe feel they've been affected themselves and are looking to make positive change in some way.
That's what I'm talking about. It's another one for the book. Thank you so much for joining me. I appreciate your time. I appreciate your energy. I appreciate you. Please join me again next Sunday for another creative community conversation.
All right. Well, enjoy your day. Have a good day. And thank you so much for your time.
I love listening to you.
Bye.
And as always, I love you, and ain't nothing you can do about it.